An apology from the Premier.
A total lack of respect, not to me, but to Indigenous people.
An Indigenous politician gets support from his party and some healthcare experts after he was accused by Doug Ford of jumping the line to get a vaccine.
They need to get their act together with this.
Plus, more fallout tonight after a clumsy vaccine pilot program at some Ontario pharmacies.
I think we've just been through a lot.
And we look in the rear view exactly 1 year after the world changed forever. And we begin with an act of remembrance you may have seen out your windows tonight. It's been 1 year since the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. Residents across the city put a light in their window honoring the lives lost to COVID-19. 22,000 people have died of the disease in Canada, more than 7,000 of those in Ontario. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. One shining light through it all has been the vaccine, and now some pharmacies in Toronto are part of a pilot program to make it easier for people to get inoculated. Last night we showed you the confusion amid the rollout of that program, and as Ali Chiasson shows us, that confusion continued through the day today.
I'm here to get that vaccine, hopefully. When I came last night at 10:30, they said come back for 8 o'clock in the morning.
I don't have an appointment there. I was told that we could just come and walk in.
I seen this on TV. I said, let me just go get it done.
Mixed messaging has led to confusion and people potentially jumping the queue.
They need to get their act together with this.
There have been lineups outside pharmacies all day of people thinking they could get a vaccine without an appointment, and they did.
I waited maybe 2 minutes. They took me into the back and quickly administered the vaccine.
This side, I'm assuming everybody's here for a vaccine?
Even though according to the government's policy, vaccines are only supposed to be administered by appointment only, and yet...
If you have an appointment, we'll take care of that for you. If you don't have an appointment, don't worry, we're going to come out with the form to be filled out, and then we'll get you into the store as soon as possible. How are you?
I'll be much better after I get this.
Okay. You're between the ages of 60 and 64?
Yes.
The Minister of Health, Christine Elliott, was asked about the guidance they gave pharmacies concerning the vaccination program.
Our guidance to pharmacies is to make appointments by phone so that people don't have to stand in long lineups. And we want them to follow the guidelines that we have outlined, that we want people who are 60 to 64 to be the people that they are vaccinating at this time.
This goes to show how eager many people are to roll up their sleeves to get the AstraZeneca vaccine, which has been paused in some countries over concerns of blood clot cases in people who've recently received a dose. No firm link has been made, and Ontario will continue to administer the vaccine.
We're making all of our decisions based on on science and the data. I don't believe it will cause a vaccine hesitancy.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
So is the worry with the AstraZeneca vaccine warranted? We asked the experts.
Bad things happen to people who also happen to get vaccines. And so it doesn't mean that the vaccine caused it.
Extremely unlikely that there's any kind of issue. And even if there were, the risk from coronavirus is far greater than any risk related to this kind of problem.
As of March 10th, the European Union has seen 30 reports of blood clots in people who received the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. 3 people have died. That, though, is out of 5 million people who received the AstraZeneca vaccine in Europe. Health Canada put out a statement tonight saying the vaccine met stringent safety, efficacy, and quality requirements. They haven't received any reports of adverse events related to the vaccine here in Canada. And the European Medicines Agency says the vaccine can continue to be administered while the investigation continues. Even with some people leery about getting a shot, COVID vaccines are still the most precious resource in the world right now. And tonight, Ontario's opposition leader is calling on Premier Doug Ford to apologize after he accused an Indigenous MPP of vaccine queue jumping. Dahlia Ashry has that story.
Accusations were made by the Premier earlier today against NDP MPP Saul Mamakwa. but the member flew in too to get his vaccine. So thank you for doing that and kind of jumping the line, as I talked to a few chiefs that were pretty upset about that. For flying into a community that he doesn't belong to.
Mamakwa represents Kiwitnook, which is near Kenora Rainy River. He says he did not jump the line and is calling the Premier's allegations disrespectful.
It is a lack of compassion to the people that are getting vaccinated in the north.
On January 29th, a different First Nation invited him to get vaccinated, part of an effort to help increase vaccine uptake among Indigenous people to combat vaccine hesitancy in First Nations communities. A First Nations health authority even thanked him for it. And those leading Operation Remote Immunity said the MPP was encouraging community members to be vaccinated. Now, his boss, opposition leader Andrea Horvath, is defending Mamakwa, saying the Premier's false accusations jeopardize the work Indigenous leaders are doing.
It's not just a matter of the apology. He needs to actually fix the damage he's done here.
No apology from the Premier's office tonight. Instead, they directed us to the Health Minister's comments earlier today.
We want to continue to work with our Indigenous partners who are true leaders in all of this.
Dr. Michael Anderson is an Indigenous health researcher. He says there's a history of the healthcare system using Indigenous communities for research.
But there's also this distrust of when someone like that is seen being vaccinated, that sends a message to community members. If he trusts the vaccination, they should trust the vaccine.
And MPP Mamakwa says the Premier's accusation is not just about the healthcare system.
That reaction that he had with me is part of that. That's what it is that colonialism, racism that Indigenous people have to face in these settings.
He says he'd consider accepting an apology if there ever were one. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
To Sudbury now, where the government is kicking the COVID emergency brake into gear. Sudbury and Manitoulin will move back into the gray lockdown zone as of tomorrow. The decision was made on the advice of the province's chief medical officer of health because of concerning trends in the region. Sudbury Manitoulin currently has 211 active cases of COVID-19, but from March 3rd to March 9th, the region's case count increased by 54%. Trends in the rest of the province were also in the spotlight today. Health officials continue to keep an eye on the variants of concern, which now make up more than 40% of new daily cases. It means there's still the potential for another surge and the return of tighter restrictions. Lorenda Redekop has the details.
This family business just opened again on Monday. The husband and wife owners can't afford to hire staff anymore. Their stock for winter has been sitting in the basement. Now they've spent thousands on spring and summer lines, hoping things turn around.
We just did it.
It's like Groundhog Day. So if we have to close again, I don't know if we're going to survive. And I don't know if a lot of businesses are going to actually survive a third lockdown, to be honest.
The worry for Ontario's modelling experts is with variants of concern, now making up around 40% of new cases.
There is still much danger ahead. Mobility is increasing, and with that, the risk of greater spread.
Today, they presented three vastly different scenarios for what could be coming just 3 weeks from now. Either close to 2,000 cases a day, close to 6,000, or even 8,000. The projections for people in ICU also follow three different paths, depending on the level of restrictions and masking and distancing.
We know what to do. We just need to do it again, and do it consistently. But if there needs to be a state of emergency again, that's something that can be covered off. It's something we would rather not do, but if we have to do it.
The surgery backlog keeps growing. Cases are up in 24 of Ontario's 34 health regions. Though Toronto is one area, they're down.
This growth isn't random. It's a function of how loosening public health measures, increased mobility, and growth in new variants come together.
One piece of good news today, vaccinations in long-term care have clearly had an effect, with no new deaths in 5 days. The science table says more vaccinations among the rest of the population will help, along with government measures, critical to determining what the summer looks like.
To help out
at this clothing store, they say after the past year, they need a few good months.
And we've tried to, look at the glass half full, but at the end of the day, you can only do that for so long.
Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to an ongoing investigation in Toronto. Metrolink says police are on the case after finding a noose at an Eglinton crosstown construction site on Wednesday. The company says it was appalled to learn of the incident and it's cooperating in the investigation. This most recent discovery comes after a series of hateful acts and messages at construction sites last summer. 8 nooses have been found on 4 different construction sites in Toronto since June, and 1 person has been arrested. And an update to a land dispute in the Jane Finch community. The province says they're giving more than 2 acres of land to the city to build a community hub and center for the arts. The land is near a future Finch West LRT facility. Last summer, the local councillor said Metrolink, which owned the land and promised a community center, planned to instead sell it at market value. After protests, Metrolink and the Ford government publicly committed to the original plan. Pickering residents took their fight against a development on the Duffins Creek wetlands to East York today. They rallied outside the company that hopes to build an Amazon warehouse in the environmentally sensitive area. Philip Lishanuk reports.
This is one of the properties a source within Amazon confirms the Seattle-based company is considering for a new warehouse. It's close to Highway 401 in Pickering, east of Toronto. This couple says Amazon should keep looking.
We're saying not to build it where there. I think, frankly, I say boycott Amazon.
Yesterday, they took a walk in the wetlands surrounding Lower Duffins Creek. Today, they made the trek to protest out front of the company that owns the land near the Golden Mile in Toronto.
Amazon is already getting nervous about this as kind of a PR disaster.
The province says ministerial zoning orders are needed to streamline the approvals process for economically necessary developments. But community groups and environmental groups say they're being used to steamroll over their concerns. Protesters say the provincial orders mean there's a lack of transparency for decisions where landowners, developers, and municipalities could potentially be making tens of millions of dollars.
I think they're being used very cynically to push in development that hasn't had a chance to be looked at by the public and by environmental specialists. And you can't just streamline that. That takes time.
The Toronto Region Conservation Authority has been ordered to issue a permit that will authorize construction on the wetlands by Friday, when a hearing will be held to attach potential conditions. Environmental groups Eco-Justice and Environmental Defense say while it's impossible to recreate what will be lost, the authority should ask for $3.5 million to create a wetland of similar size elsewhere.
I think the conditions should be such that they won't build it.
Legal action is also before the courts to prevent any construction. The groups don't oppose Amazon building a warehouse on golf course land in Ajax, less than a kilometer to the east. Philip Lishanuk, CBC News, Toronto.
After record heat today, we're going to bring those temperatures down in a couple of phases. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. I'll explain what that means and how the weekend's looking coming up.
Welcome back. 1 year ago today, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. Now, to commemorate that, Justin Trudeau designated today a National Day of Observance. Greg Ross looks back at a year like no other.
365 days ago, that's when the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, forcing all of us to adapt to a new way of life. But back then, it seemed almost unreal to think it would last an entire year.
Originally, I thought, lockdown for 3 weeks, a month.
Little did we know just how big a toll it would take on us mentally.
I think we've just been through a lot, and it's really, really emotional.
Hundreds of thousands of Canadians have contracted the virus in the last year. More than 22,000 have died, including 2,703 people here in Toronto.
This day of observance gives us an opportunity to remember the people who have died this year, our loved ones, our friends, our co-workers, our neighbors.
Unfortunately, we had patients dying with nobody.
Rosina Ramrattan is an ICU nurse at Michael Garron Hospital. Oftentimes, she was the last person in the room as patients died, witnessing unforgettable moments, like a daughter having to connect with her mother over Zoom in the final moments of her life.
So I stood in there for maybe like 30 minutes and just listened to the daughter sob, to her mom and speaking in a different dialect. I didn't even need to understand what she was saying, and my heart was breaking, Even right now, I feel like I'm getting a little choked up just thinking about it.
But it wasn't only loved ones that were lost to the pandemic.
Even just walking up and down this street, you can see a lot of the businesses just couldn't sustain and are gone.
Anita Mancuso owns Soto Voce Wine and Pasta Bar on College Street. Her business has survived so far thanks to subsidies from the government. Some might say she's lucky, not her.
I don't know about if luck had anything to do with it, to be honest. I don't feel lucky. It's been really, really hard work.
Hard work she hopes will soon pay off, and not just for her business.
It's about having the community back and having those relationships back and getting that fun back in our lives.
And today, 1 year after it all began, there's hope for all of those things.
The vaccines are hope. The vaccines are here, and more vaccines, a lot more, are on the way.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Just a beautiful day out there today. Not so much now, though, especially if you caught this evening when that windy rainstorm came through. And you maybe saw my pal Ali Chiasson caught on TV right in the middle of it. You can check out the full behind-the-scenes video on her Twitter, and it's definitely worth a watch. But as we look at that skyline, it is still chilly tonight. It was very warm today, record-breaking heat, in fact, for this middle of March. Colette Kennedy has the full weather details for you now. Colette.
Thanks, Chris. Kind of an eventful day weather-wise today with the warm temperatures, lots of records, strong winds, and then that line of storms moved through as well. But speaking of records, lots of them broken today with the high temperature, but from Harrow, Trenton, Goderich, Algonquin, to name a few. And yes, Toronto, we got just over 19 degrees, and Burlington, a new record as well. Upper teens again around the GTA and including St. Catharines up to 20 degrees. But we're looking at the cool down that's coming behind that front that passed with the thunderstorm activity and the breezy conditions backing off overnight tonight. And then tomorrow they're going to turn towards the northwest and become breezy again as the second cold front goes through. So temperatures come down a bit for tomorrow, and then they come down more behind that second front falling tomorrow night and into the weekend. But still the temperatures will be above seasonal, double digits, barely, but we're going to get there Friday. And there you see it. That's kind of, although it's back to normal, there's going to be sunshine coming this weekend as well. It actually looks really quite pleasant for some outdoor activities. The daytime highs, though, just having a look at some of those readings there, and 20 degrees back towards Windsor. Even Ottawa, a new record today, too. So I have to mention you guys as well. But just looking ahead at what we get into, well, clear skies tonight and tomorrow, so that means we'll start off with sun. But when that secondary cold front comes through, watch how this drops down. As it does, right around the lunch hour or just after, suddenly we'll get kind of a burst of increasing cloudiness and also just a few showers, even mixing with some wet flurries in a few areas, because that's just along that front, that line ushering in the colder air. And that's also when the winds from the northwest are going to kind of ramp up as that passes through. Then they'll back off a little bit, but still we could see a little bit of lake effect too. So just a few flurries become possible Friday night. Unlikely to make it down into the GTA, but certainly you may see a few flakes into cottage country over towards Goderich, Mount Forest area as well. Tonight for southwestern Ontario, we're looking at your lows just above the freezing mark, so I won't give you a wind chill here as the winds will be easing off too, and clear skies. And then tomorrow, a pleasant day, 13 Windsor, Sarnia, up to 10 degrees, maybe picking up again a little cloud cover as that front goes by. And looking at overnight tonight with generally a clearing trend and lows of 2 to -2, will be right around freezing at the airport. And then tomorrow afternoon, there you see those winds I talked about, and you see those daytime highs. So we kind of back it off in half, and then we sort of cut that temperature in half again as we go into the weekend. But looking good till about Tuesday, Chris, when we have a chance for a light, and I do mean a light at this point anyway, mix of precipitation.
Oh, that looks fantastic. Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
That great weather may have you itching to go for a nice bike ride, and you're far from alone.
Seize the opportunity while you can, because if you wait until the bike arrives, by the time you go to the store, it's going to be gone.
All right, we mentioned that Ali Chiasson rainy live hit before the break, and we couldn't pass up the opportunity to share this with you. In the course of 2 minutes, it went from warm to windy to torrential rain, and she stuck it out through it all. What a trooper, delivering some critical information on vaccines and looking great while doing it. Now, before the rain, Torontonians got to enjoy more double-digit temperatures. Bike shops in the city are slammed preparing for the spring season, and Jessica Ng reports.
Chris Basti is preparing a customer's freshly tuned-up bike. The co-owner of Enduro Sport, a Leaside bike shop, says while nice weather typically brings customers in, supply is scarce to start the season.
Our levels are extremely low right now, but we don't foresee a fill-in for almost a year's time.
Basti says he's been telling some customers their orders might not come in until September, or in some cases next spring. He says he attributes the delay to pandemic-related health protocols slowing and reducing production from manufacturers.
We're social distancing here, but it's happening in Asia and in the U.S., all over the place. So supply is really hampered.
Rob Bartel agrees. The owner of Velotique on Queen Street East says he's still waiting on orders from last year and has received under 15% to date.
Normally, we would have well over 70% of the bikes that we have. So we're looking at some serious shortages.
Adding on to increased demand for the sport and equipment. That's convinced some prospective buyers, like Christopher McGarrell, the founder of Mandem Cycling Club, to hit the shops months before the start of the season. He says he picked up his new ride in January to try to beat the rush.
It was really hard to get your hand on something right now. So a lot of people are resorting to, Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace and trying to find bikes secondhand.
Experienced cyclists like McGarrell say they saw a significant increase in the number of cyclists on the roads this past winter. He says he anticipates even more people will be on the roads this summer as compared to last, and shops agree.
We're definitely seeing a big influx of demand.
So whether you're seasoned or novice, what advice do you have for someone who might be on the fence about getting that new bike?
Seize the opportunity while you can, because if you wait until the bike arrives, by the time you go to the store, it's going to be gone.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
And no matter how you do it, it's always great to get outside and enjoy that nice weather that is coming. That is our show for you tonight. Before we go, one last look at a beautiful gesture marking the one-year anniversary of the pandemic. Here's how a Bloor West resident and their pup marked the milestone.